Hey everyone, my name is Rooster, and welcome back to Mechabellum. In today's video, I'm going to be showcasing the new Rift mode for the very first time, and it'll be up against KeyPals, as he was kind enough to set up a custom lobby for us, where we could play with 5 different variants at once. Now, in this game, I decided to go for Fire Badger Specialist, and we will very quickly go through all of the modifications that will apply to this game. So let me pause very quickly and have a look here at the top right. So what do we have? We have Mechanical Evolution, which means that we start with Mechanical Evolution, which is the spell that you can see here. Both players have it, and you can use it once a turn to evolve a selected friendly unit into a unit that is worth 100 more. Now, this does not have to be a level 1 unit. It can be any unit that is worth 100 more. So if I level up a Steel Ball, it can turn into quick math, level 6 crawler, if I'm not mistaken. That is an option. As long as the unit is worth 100 more supplies, it can be evolved into. Now, there's also experimental equipment, which every round will give you 4 free options of equipment that is altered. But the equipment, whilst being powerful, will auto-destruct after 1 round of use. Now, there's also Giant Hunt here, where all Giant and Titans have their unlock cost reduced by 50. Don't mind the typo there, it's not 50%, it's 50. Their recruitment cost is also reduced by 50, but each time you kill a Giant, you gain 50, or your opponent gains 50 if they kill one of yours. There's also Count to 3, where unit unlock, recruitment, and tuck upgrades cost 50 less supplies, and we can only build 3 of said squad. And then finally, we have Dominion Core, which is the item that we can see here, which gives a whole bunch of stats, 80% attack, 160% HP, but if your opponent takes down the unit that carries it, your entire army explodes, and the round is over. So hopefully you're up to pace. I know it's a lot to deal with, but things will perhaps become a little bit clearer as we play. And immediately here you can see that a Sandworm has been created. Now, Sandworm currently costs 300 because of the different modifications, right? Giant Hunt reduces the cost by 50, and so does Count to 3. So a Sledgehammer was therefore evolved into a Sandworm. And I decided to evolve a Steel Ball. Part of the reason I did that is because it was up against Sledgehammers, and I thought the matchup wasn't great. And I ended up with a Vulcan here, which is not exactly what I expected, but it is also 300 cost with the modifications in play. Now, we have our Dominion Core, obviously, and, well, I decided to just throw it onto my Vulcan and put it on the left side of the board. Steel Balls all the way in the back to kind of support it, and then we were just going to buy some chaff. Now, note that all of the units here are 50 cheaper, so instead of having to buy something like double Crawler or whatever, I can actually get away with a Crawler and another Steel Ball in this scenario. I didn't mind having the Steel Ball available because I felt like that was going to be the most powerful, and I can easily evolve it into something else if it proves to be useless. And, well, up against the Sandworm, I have to say I was pretty happy that I had these. I also picked up a Marksman, which is my round 1, right? Marksman plus Steel Ball. And I did that because I was a bit afraid that he might evolve into something like an air unit, because you can get a Phoenix, and then I would just lose by default, which I really didn't want to. And here you can see, boom, the entire enemy army collapses as we take down that Dominion Core Sandworm on the left side of the board. And here we are in round number 2 with unit reinforcements. So we don't quite get to see the experimental equipment yet, but don't worry, it will come. Phantom Ray, now, picked up for KeyPals, felt like the best pickup for me as well here. There were arc lights, but my chaff clear was fine. I could go Mustang, but I didn't mind kind of going for the mirror here. And now the Sandworm gets leveled into a level 8 Hound. So this is what I mean by you can get just about anything as long as it's, you know, the same cost of, well, whatever you're trading up to. So 400 here turns into a level 8 Hound, now with a Dominion Core on it with 3,500 damage per shot and 18,000 hit points per Hound. Quite the unit there, and definitely not something that you would usually see. I also pick up my own Phantom Rays, one more, and some Fangs in front of the towers. Keep in mind, we're only able to have 3 of every unit, so I tried to get as much chaff on the board as possible. Now, you will see that I do have one more crawler here, which was actually one of my steel balls evolved into a level 5 crawler. So you can, that way, actually break the rules and get 4 of a said unit. And let's see, we're doing rather well. We managed to take out the enemy Phantom Rays, but it looks like we may end up getting stuck here. I mean, that Hound, it is a lot tankier than you might expect. And yeah, my Vulcan is doing whatever it can, and it's tanky itself at 92,000 hit points, but a little more to go, and yeah, there it goes. My Vulcan explodes, and therefore all of my Phantom Rays die as well. Now you have round number 3, and here are the experimental equipments, and it's a lot to read. There are a ton of options. You have Experimental Evolution Device, which basically gives stats every second that the unit's in combat. We have Experimental Acid Ammunitions, which lays acid on the ground wherever the unit shoots. And then we have something like Experimental Barrier as well, which generates a barrier with 180,000 hit points to protect nearby units. And you will see it is comically large. It is something else entirely. This is not your typical barrier. It can also, interestingly, be put on an air unit. And I imagine you'll be able to even protect your own air units with it because of how big it is. It actually reaches really far up into the sky. So yeah, a cool item for sure. And you could, for instance, throw it onto an Overlord. Now my opponent just buys it to transfer the Dominion Core on, and they transition or transform their level 8 Hound into a level 2 Vulcan now. So both of us have Vulcans. He decides to pick up that Experimental Acid Ammunition, whereas I bought my own Vulcan and went for the barrier. So he'll be putting down acid on the ground wherever his Vulcan fires. And I decide to also put another Phantom Ray here on the right side to kind of pressure the right tower and, you know, get my deployments down. Phantom Rays can be a bit tricky to deal with, so I didn't mind having a few of them. And yeah, if we look here, acid is being put on the ground, and honestly, the barrier is doing a great job for me here. Really, really nice job, as it prevents the acid from landing too far back, and it actually lands on the edge of the shield, which obviously reaches really, really far forward because of how, you know, large the shield here is. So we managed to overwhelm and perhaps even use that acid to our advantage and take down the remaining Overlord. Everything else was dead already, so the Dominion Core there didn't really cost Key Pals too much, but he does end up taking a sizable amount of damage. Anyway, round number 4, more experimental equipment shows up. There's Experimental Barrier yet again, but a familiar face shows up. Parasitic Ammunitions, the experimental version of it. 50% bonus increased attack power, but you also have the Replicate effect, spawning crawlers for every kill that your unit makes. If anyone remembers and was around, you know, 2 years ago, something like that, parasitic ammo was an actual item in the game, and it was incredibly frustrating to play against because you would just put it on something like a Vulcan or a Mustang or a Wraith, and you would spawn, you know, a bajillion crawlers anytime you would kill enemy chaff, which is why it got removed. But they brought it back in the experimental version of this special game mode that we call Rift, and it only sticks around for a single round. So honestly, I don't mind it too much. Now, that Vulcan, it got transformed, I believe, into a wasp here, perhaps, as it is going to be attacking us from that right side, and the melting point is now being purchased with range to try and counter my Vulcan. The right side, not that well protected. I tried to put a Fang down, but I wasn't necessarily expecting this Wasp to fly in. Keep in mind, the Dominion Core Wasp actually did not have more than 5,000 hit points. So if I did accidentally put a missile here, his Wasp would have died, and his entire army would have exploded. That is how this item works. I decided to level something up and put the Badger on the flank, which is an interesting mechanic of the whole mechanical evolution game, in my opinion. You can go for aggressive flanks, then you can retrieve your unit by deciding to evolve it, and it will basically spawn back in on the helipad And that's one way to retrieve your units without having to necessarily sell them. Badger gets in, gets a debuff, and that way we are going to be able to take down the wasps, and the melter explodes as a result. So far, so good, and yeah, it's been going exceptionally well for us. And now round number 5, experimental splitter device shows up, another experimental parasitic ammunition as well, which looks pretty cool, but I wanted to try and test as many items as possible here, so I will end up going for the experimental splitter, which will spawn 2 units identical to themselves upon being destroyed, continuing the battle. Now, I believe this does not spawn leveled units. It just spawns level 1 versions of whatever unit you put it on. But the idea we had here was to go for perhaps Mechanical Division Steel Ball to make use of our limited deployments of Steel Balls and still spawn chaff. And then we can spawn 2 level 1 Steel Balls from our level 2 Steel Ball that will also spawn crawlers, which, you know, should stall for a good amount of time. Opponent here decides to go for the experimental evolution device, which of course will add 3% attack power and 3% health per second during combat, and it should be able to accrue quite a bit considering it's positioned all the way in the back. And now Key Pal's opting to go for multi-melter with the energy diffraction tech picked up. And that leaves us with, well, a Vulcan on our right side of the board, a missile as well to try and deal with that wasp, although I did think he would sell it considering in how precarious of a position it was. And I decided to range my marksman and buy a couple more. I actually managed to somehow evolve the badgers, I think, on the flank into a marksman, so I was quite happy to put that on the board. It's a level 9 marksman at that. And yeah, I give it range because I was a bit afraid of the air units, and honestly, ranged marksmen are pretty good against melting points, especially when they lose some range due to that diffraction tech. So here we go. Multi-melters, of course, very useful against mid-sized units, so they unsurprisingly destroy my phantoms pretty quickly. And they do try to get through my steel balls, but I managed to pick up mechanical division, so the crawlers are a problem, and that level 9 marksman packs a punch with 23,000 damage per shot. And on this side, we can see here steel balls dying, but then more steel balls spawning from their corpse. So for every steel ball there that died, I believe 2 steel balls level 1 popped out. And it's managing to distract here for long enough that the Vulcans can lock onto the melters, and with the help of the marksman, we will be able to take down that remaining unit and claim our victory. So that was one of the games that we played. Now, of course, it was relatively quick, but I still wanted to showcase it because it was just the complete insanity of 5 game modes in one. I'll try to also showcase you guys a completely different game where we are only playing with 2 of these modifications enabled. All right, and here we are, game number 2, which was against none other than Dillo in a game that happened on the test server ladder, so there's only 2 modifications in play. I'm not exactly sure which one they were. I believe it was Mechanical Evolution, and perhaps one of the quicker time modes, I believe Godless Fate, which we will get into. Yes, it was. So Mechanical Evolution again with the option to evolve a unit on round 1, and then Godless Fate is where players no longer receive reinforcement cards at the start of the round, and they gain 50 supplies instead. And this also happens on round 1, even though there are never any cards offered on round 1. The deployment time, though, reduced to 60 seconds, so you kind of have to play a bit faster, especially in those mid-rounds. And, well, with the Mechanical Evolution in play, you might have to think a bit more about what you want to do with this, you know, random high-level unit that you might be getting. I decided to sell one of my spiders because I wasn't quite sure, like, how good it was going to be, and I wanted to see what the game was going to give me. It ends up being a marksman, and funnily enough, my opponent, who is Fortified Spec, also gets a marksman, but 2 levels lower with the sledgehammers and the void eyes. I believe a level 1 void eye there got turned into that marksman. And I decided to pick up a Fang on the left side of the board, and I buy back a Tarantula because I'm a quick supply specialist, so I had the money to do this. And next round, I likely will be selling my marksman or evolving it, because the marksman here isn't the most useful. It's quite useful for Dillo because marksman is good at dealing single target DPS, but my opponent here has too many mid-sized units, and I just don't really want to have to deal with that. It takes really long for the marksman to get through all the Void Eyes, all the Sledgehammers, and I'd rather get something like, you know, a Raiden or a Scorpion, anything else, really. So this round we will lose. I can speed things up a little bit, as that small turret should be able to kill my Fangs. And then we'll swiftly head into round 2 and see what the game has to offer, which actually will be nothing, because again, Godless Fate. I will say this is... I like this game mode a lot, although I think some people might find it a bit dry, but it's so weird playing and then just seeing no cards show up. You just keep waiting for something to pop up, but it never does. Now, round number 2, I decide to immediately evolve my marksman, and it turns into a level 3 tarantula. And seeing that, I think to myself, well, alright, I guess I'm just going to keep that and try to invest into tarantulas down the line, because that is a very, very high level unit this early on. And, you know, a unit that's definitely capable of carrying, so let's press Mechanical Rage as our very first option here and just buy a bunch of chaff. I won't be, you know, unhappy about having the extra chaff on the board, so why not just go for it? And that's exactly what I do. So a bunch of crawlers here picked up. Sadly, I would have liked to have that on the right side. My opponent levels their marksman or evolves it into a level 2 steel ball, which now finds its way right in front of my tarantula, and sadly, it will pay the price for it. And he also decides to put a sledgehammer on my flank to try and stall a couple of crawlers. I believe it's only one crawler pack for the time being, though, so I wasn't too concerned about this. And now my level 1 tarantula, trying its very best, it took down, I think, 1.5 steel balls, but it's really up to this guy to make the difference, and well, it most certainly does. Already racking up 50,000 damage, and very, very quickly making its way through the remaining mid-sized units on my opponent's board, even having the time to leisurely turn around and get rid of those Fangs that were behind it, still finishing off the Void Eyes, and now moving over to the tower to get that debuff. The Fangs also get a debuff of their own. There's only one sledgehammer left after the crawlers killed all other 4 during the spawn-in. I don't even think it's going to be able to get the debuff here. So Spider, level 3, going to be able to get the round. Round number 3, again, no cards whatsoever, so you have to play yourself. And here I was thinking, what on earth am I going to level? I don't really know. I was a bit afraid of my anti-air situation because I have no anti-air, and I wasn't sure, like, what do I want here? Do I want to go into Phoenix, or do I maybe want to go Wasp? I also need to get rid of the Sledgehammer, even though there isn't that much, you know, that's getting pulled. So I decided to go for a late Wasp here. I thought, well, my Tarantulas can probably tank, and it's a bit of a safety measure either way. So let's just, you know, go for that Wasp and defend our flank. Now, I decided to level up, I believe, just a chaff unit here, a crawler, and it turns into a hacker, which is not a bad thing. So I was quite happy about this, pretty lucky. I put a crawler to block the steel ball in case it was being kept, which it is, and my opponent indeed does try to punish my lack of anti-air by going for aerial Void Eyes, and also going for his own Wasp play on that left side of the board. I believe something also got transformed into a level 2 Tarantula, which my opponent now has one as well. But thankfully on the left side I managed to level up my tower, and this won't fall immediately, and perhaps my Tarantula can make the difference. Still, my Wasps are my only anti-air, and well, they have less range than any of my other units I have. During the debuff, which now comes through, the Void Eyes may be able to get rid of too many Wasps without my Spiders tanking for them, and indeed that is what happens. So in spite of being able to win the main fight pretty convincingly here, I am unable to get rid of the enemy anti-air, and that's something that we'll have to focus on moving forward. Now, one way I can deal with it is just by going anti-aircraft ammunition on my Spiders, because I do run it on the test server. And, well, when I have level 3 Spiders, some of them even leveling to level 2 here, I don't think it's a bad idea to, you know, get a little bit more from my Tarantulas. They're basically just carry Tarantulas at this point. My opponent goes for a level 3 Phoenix there from something he sold. I'm not exactly sure, again, what it was. But yeah, that's a pretty scary thing. And tries to immediately lock onto my spiders. But I go for aerial specialization, which means I should be able to get rid of this. The arrow, I think, is lying because it doesn't see the Phoenix for the time being. And while I leveled up my hacker thinking he would definitely sell his steel balls, a little bit of a risk being taken there, but it pays off. And a badger was made instead, which I decided to put on that top right flank to kill the crawlers. I also put a tarantula on the left to defend against that wasp. And, well, look at that. Enemy goes for Wraith as their choice of chaff clear, but my level 3 tarantula is not really impressed. The other one also managed to take down one of those high-level phoenixes at the start of the round, so we are incredibly favored here from the get-go. Left side going well too, tarantula farming some nice experience. And although my other tarantulas do fall, the level 3, about to be level 4, is dominating. Great round, and, well, the tarantulas are just getting out of control more and more as this game goes on. Now, I did kind of want to grab something a little bit more, you know, specific to try and counter this Wraith, and I thought to myself, well, a classic composition would be something like Phoenix and Tarantula, so why not go for that? My opponent here sells out of his Phoenix and manages to get a level 9 marksman in return, opting to go for Assault mode. Not a bad option at all against the Tarantulas, especially when it's level 9. That is incredibly tanky, over 90,000 hit points, and should provide some good frontline plus DPS against my carry spiders. As for me, I'm not really trying to do too much else here aside from making sure that my tarantulas can stay alive and perhaps grabbing some more dedicated DPS and not letting my spiders do all of the work. So here we go. We grab, I think, another chaff all the way here in the back left to try and defend my tower. And I go for 2 blue phoenixes, one lined up with this wraith, one with the other. And I go for a missile to perhaps try and kill something that may show up on the flank if my opponent decided to put a crawler there and distract, you know, any of my units. Marksman making pretty quick work of one of my tarantulas, but that's not where the important one is, as it now decides to turn around and deal with these beaconed wasps. They're not going to get too far, though some crawlers are being a little bit pesky. Badger, by the way, managing to get the flank, my opponent not expecting it, and I also went for a level 5 hound that I got from an evolution on the top left flank, which manages to get through. So we're kind of picking apart the opponent here, creating multiple threats from that really early, right, tarantula that we got and managing to snowball it, which is a key factor, I think, of this game mode. But yeah, you can go for some very aggressive plays on the line and then, you know, evolve the unit, retrieve it, put it somewhere else, put stuff on the flanks, evolve that, then retrieve it. It's a very, very fun game mode and one of my favorite, I think, modifications from all of the game modes that I've played so far. I am a big fan of Godless as well, but I think Mechanical Evolution is definitely my favorite. Now, I decided to evolve one of my hounds, the one that was on the top left here, expecting my opponent to deal with it, and I got a level 7 Fang in return, so this also can happen. Now, I decided to pair it up with my Phoenix because I was like, well, the bottom right here is pretty vulnerable. This side is very safe, level tower, and Tarantula can hit air, but over here I didn't have anything, and my wasp, or my Phoenix, would be vulnerable to something like a wasp. So I decided to put the Fang here, and well, I was correct, as that does end up happening. So very happy about this. And meanwhile, my opponent opting to level the Wasp, or evolve it, and getting a level 3 hacker in return, trying to deal with my badgers, but I saw that, oh, my opponent didn't react to it last round. He might undercommit again this round. So let's just put a crawler there to protect our badgers. And then, you know, if it doesn't work, we can just get the evolution and, well, grab a different unit. More phoenixes now being picked up as I felt like, well, my spiders are in a good spot. All I need is more DPS because those assault mode marksmen are very tanky. And what else do we have? Spiders with high explosive this time around. which will help a ton with the chaff clear. And you can see immediately all my crawlers here are dead. The right side did get stalled for a little bit, and that is making all the difference as the enemy Void Eyes are managing to push through. The enemy Marksman at level 9 is, you know, absolutely bullying my spiders. That's the high level one there going down. And even though my Badger does manage to push through and get rid of the hacker, the debuff isn't the best as I don't have any chaff clear left. So it takes a really long time for me to get through everything. Eventually, though, we do get there. The level 9 Marksman is down. We take out another spider. We do get debuffed in return, but I think I should have enough here to be able to claim another victory, if only a minor one. And so here I was wondering, well, what do I need to change? What went wrong? I guess stuff got missiled, so I might want to have a little bit more chaff, and, well, perhaps some techs here could go a long way. Now, I decided to immediately evolve my Fang, and it turned from a level 7 to a level 9. So I said, all right, I see you, Bear-like. Thank you very much for that. Let's just, I guess, put it in the same spot and be happy with it. Now, the Badger in the top right, I decided to keep there. I probably should have evolved that instead, but there's no way for you to know what you're going to get from an evolution, and it is not something that you can undo. So do keep that in mind. You can't just, you know, infinitely try and re-roll different units on your board to get the best possible option. Once you get an evolution, that's the one you're stuck with for that round. Now I decided to go for range on my spiders, indeed, to try and keep them a little bit safer, and I also decide to range my phoenixes. I take a loan, and I go for the second attack enhancement here because it just benefits my tarantulas so much. And Dillo decides to go for an aggressive level 2 Rhino armor play to block my Badgers and also run towards my tower as he went for a flank there with the Rhino as well. Opens up the tower very nicely, and I do end up getting debuffed for 7 seconds. Will it be enough for Dillo to take over here? This hacker, definitely a bit scary. He did decide to invest into range on it, and if it starts taking over some of my tarantulas, I may be in trouble. For now, though, we seem to be doing well. I do get debuffed again, but there are some high-level fangs, thankfully, in the way of the hacker, preventing my spiders from getting taken over. And, well, in the meantime, my units were also working on his tower, and I get a good debuff to get yet another win. Now, I take all the levels on round number 8, and I go for charge shot immediately. And with the evolution, I go for a Badger evolve, which turns into steel balls, which I can use on the left side of the board to try and counter this Rhino. And I'll just try and plug the gaps. I'm pretty happy about all the diagonals here, but this line into my tower needs to be filled. So I'm going to go for a Spider, a Fang, and then a Steel Ball to make sure that we have everything covered from chaff to chaff clear to DPS. And perhaps just adding another Phoenix here would, you know, make sure that absolutely nothing can happen. Charge shot, by the way, because I wanted to kill the enemy Rhinos quicker. I wanted to kill his Tarantulas and Assault Mode Marksman quicker. And then I also, you know, wanted to be able to perhaps get rid of my own Tarantulas if they happen to get hacked, which was Dillo's plan here as he buys 3 blue hackers trying to take over. But yeah, I mean, look at this, right? Insta-lock there on the Spider. Insta-lock as well on mine, so they do start getting hacked. But this one on the left is very beefy. Level 5, 85,000 hit points, taking a while to take over. Level 3 does get hacked, but we kill it very, very swiftly thanks to that charge shot DPS bonus. And I mean, now things are just looking fantastic. Left side under too much pressure. Steel Balls and Phoenixes combining to take that tower down. Even though there are some pesky wasps in the way, the 4 Phoenix packs shooting at it will not take too long and also be able to take down the remaining hacker. So another victory here in a more normal game mode where we have 2 modifications active. Hopefully kind of showing you what one of these game modes may look like. Now, I've got other replays as well. Some losses, some wins, which I will be uploading in the days to come. There are more changes to the new season than just this game mode, although it is mostly what I'll be playing on the test server. But I'll still be able to showcase some of the new techs that way as well, because there are new techs coming to the game, which will be available both in regular play and in Rift, and some of them are very interesting in terms of what they can provide to the board. Anyway, if you like this video, please leave a thumbs up. Let me know down below what you think about what you've seen so far. The Rift mode, have you played any on the test server, and what did you think about it? What is your favorite modification so far? Let me know. If you want to stay up to date with my latest content, please consider subscribing. And if you want to see me play live, check me out on Twitch. With that being said, take care, guys, and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.